Not particularly. No, you
Okay,
that point.
because
when I've read books on this, when you read a range of scholars, not just one paperback, and you read different schools of thought, you come to the conclusion that you're not basing Islam on the opinion of one man who wrote one paperback. You're aware of a great diversity of opinion, not just one paperback.
Yeah, but I'm not talking about Islam in general.
and that's why that paperback doesn't prove anything.
I'm talking about the belief that the Islam practiced by the Salaf is the purest and best form of Islam in existence, and that the consensus of the four Imams is authoritative. And I've looked at actual evidence of what the four Imams believe. You say.
What are we talking about, by the way?
Well, the initial example I brought to you was about making war.
Is that what we're talking about?
Yes, the four Imams believe that. I'll read directly from the four Imams.
Let's start from Hanafi first.
Okay, well, I'm reading a book written by Al-Qadi as-Safadi, who was the head jurist in Damascus in, I think, 1400 or something like that.
It's just one man's opinion. Okay.
Okay, well,
there are lots of jurists with lots of opinions. Don't put all your eggs in one basket. Think you've learned Islam because you found a 14th century jurist.
Please tell me a text that disagrees with me. Then that's more.
There are lots of texts that disagree. You see, jurists disagree with each other, have many opinions. I'll send you a list.
Okay, that's great.
But what I'm saying is the methodology here. To put all your eggs in one basket of a 14th century Damascene scholar is not what Muslims do. We don't rush to this text. We rush to a variety of scholars and scholarly fatwas and so on over the centuries. We don't go to one guy. Now, there are some eccentric voices, some oddball voices, the oddball scholars who say weird and wacky things.
He's not regarded as an oddball.
What? How do you know?
Because I've read reviews of the book.
What, by his contemporaries?
By publishing houses.
No, by Muslims.
Yeah, Muslims who run publishing houses who will have studied this themselves.
Well, I'm saying there are, nonetheless, oddball scholars. We just don't go to any scholar. I'm just giving
I appreciate you don't have an encyclopedic knowledge of the writings of the four Imams off your head now. So I don't think this will be a productive conversation unless we actually get with the empirical evidence. So maybe we should postpone this for a bit later.
We're talking about the Quran.
We're talking about what the four Imams believed and what they advocated. Because it says here, they agree that the people of every frontier must fight the unbelievers close to them. So I'd like you to find evidence that the four Imams specifically do not agree with that.
You see, he's not quoting the four Imams, is he?
He's not directly quoting them. He's saying what they believe based on their writings.
You see, he is saying that about the four Imams. I happen to know that in Islamic military jurisprudence, you don't attack countries that you have treaties with. How do I know that? How do I know that? Because the Quran teaches that.
That's not a direct contradiction, though. Obviously, accepting those that you have treaties. No, later on, though, it mentions treaties in this book.
Okay. You see, that quote, doesn't mention treaties. But it gives an leading impression that you just attack everyone who's not a Muslim. That's not the Islamic position. It never has been. It's a misleading quote. That's what you need to talk about.
No, it's not misleading if you read the whole chapter.
Give me quotes where it talks about the treaties. Because it is wrong to say that Islam has ever taught that you just attack non-believers. The Quran doesn't say that. In Surah number 9, verses 4, 5 and 6, you'll see when it's talking about the battle with the Meccans, that you do attack those who have betrayed your treaty, except for those who uphold the treaty. It says you don't have anything to do with them. You don't attack them. If they uphold the treaty, you're in good terms.
What he's talking about, though, is people who don't have a treaty with and who haven't attacked you. I think that's what he's referring to, that they were seemingly, from what I understand, allowed to attack people who have not attacked you and who didn't have a treaty.
Right. But that is in dispute. The Hanafi school does not teach that. He's not provided any quotes from any of the four madhabs of Hanafi, Shafi, Maliki and Hanbali. He's not quoted them. He's got a paragraph from a 14th century Damascene jurist who says all the four schools, they all teach. Well, I've not read that. So it's just a claim.
Listen. Right. They agree that when unbelievers make a treaty, its terms should always be observed, except in the view of Abu Hanifa, who makes it a precondition that the terms must entail some benefit for the Muslims. If the benefit ends, the treaty is automatically abrogated. They agree that if a woman of the idolaters emigrates to Dar al-Islam and the ruler has agreed to a stipulation that if a Muslim enters his territory, he will return him to the unbelievers she has not returned. So yeah, it does mention treaties.
But not the quote you mentioned originally.
Okay,
didn't mention.
okay,
that's
but
why
like,
it was misleading.
Or if you only,
if
if you only look at it, yes, but like obviously, like it's saying.
It's not obvious. You've got to quote it. Otherwise, you can't assume exceptions where you don't mention them. You've got to make it clear. The quote you mentioned gave the impression wrongly that Muslims are simply to attack non-believers, whoever they may be.
But that is false. That is true where no treaty exists.
Yes,
that's
but
true.
You didn't say that.
Will you admit that where no treaty exists, even if the non-Muslims haven't attacked the Muslims at all, the Imams agree that Muslims living in the frontier should attack.
I don't accept because I've not seen any evidence of that.
Well, this is evidence.
That's not evidence.
Why is it not evidence?
Because you've not quoted
jurist. I showed you the quote a few minutes ago.
You've got a paperback at Speaker's Corner in English, and I'm supposed to believe that.
Is this a forgery? Is the
question for you, Paul. What would it take to convince you?
Excellent question. Let me show you how I work. It's different from how you work. I'll show you because I'm funny like that.
For so long.
No, but you've not shown me evidence. I'll show you. This is how my funny mind works. Okay, when people make claims, they say Abraham Lincoln said X. They say, look, it says in my paperback he said X. I think, hang on. Okay, let me just check. I want to see written speech of what he said before I believe it. Because in my experience, maybe because I'm old and funny duddy. I'm finished. I see where you're going with this. Let's kind of return next week once we both have the evidence of the actual original writings of the Imams. Let me finish. I know from experience, from being a Christian as well as being a Muslim, the first rule when it comes to these things is always check the sources. Always check the sources, because people make claims. They may be a 14th century jurist. Wow. But I want to check it out for myself, because I've been told lots of stuff which when I checked it out, I was told there's a Christian over there told me an hour ago, it says in the Quran that only men go to paradise and enjoy the fruits of paradise. And I said, well, show me a verse. And you said it was Surah 5, whatever. And I looked up in my Quran and it says the pious, the muqahin, the believers. It doesn't say men, it says believers. And he acknowledged that what he said was wrong.
Okay, cool.
Good. Now, the point is this. I didn't just take his word for it.
Do you want to come back next week, or do you want to converse over email?
Just give me another 30 seconds. So my point is this. When a book makes a claim about what the founders of the four schools say, I personally, because I'm just funny like that, will not just take that as knowledge without checking it. And do you know, when I was at university, that's exactly what they told me. Always check the sources. Always check the sources, because often what we're told is not correct.
So you're going to do that?
So when you ask me why I don't accept it, because I've not seen the evidence. He says in his book, it says, oh, they believe that, but he's not actually quoted me the evidence. And that's how, if you're going to deal with me, that's how funny I am. I've got to see the evidence.
Okay.
And not just accept what you say because you read it in a paperback.
Okay, here's the thing. I asked you kind of like a long time ago, tell me a more authoritative source that disagrees with that. You didn't do that when I asked you. So clearly. Okay, but does that necessarily say anything about what the Imams actually agreed upon, though, in their interpretation?
No,
not really.
Yes, it does. Because it does. Let me explain to you how it does.
I can assure you it doesn't, because there are definitely verses in the Quran which justify this. Fighting is prescribed to you is one of the verses that they use to justify this outlook.
Because the four Imams, Abu Hanifa, was not dogmatic and who insisted that his view. He always deferred. He always said, if I'm wrong, check it by the Quran. If I'm wrong, I'm wrong. And I'm saying the Quran does talk about honouring the treaties of those unbelievers. We have treaties with. Now, if it is the case, and I'm sure it's not, that Abu Hanifa disagreed with that, he would be the first person when he was shown in the Quran it says that he would admit he was wrong. Because the authority that Abu Hanifa had was not Abu Hanifa, it was God and his word. The passage you quoted at the beginning and you held on to for 20 minutes does not say that. It doesn't allude to peace treaties with unbelievers. And it was only when I pressed you managed to find another chapter which qualified your opening paragraph.
There's a different heading about treaties.
Yeah. So you got to find the original. I want you to find Abu Hanifa, Shafi, Maliki. I want you to show me where they say we must always attack the unbelievers or whatever it is you're claiming. And I'm personally sure you're wrong. But show me the evidence.
Okay, I will do that. But like as a little corollary, why do you think the onus is on me to do that?
Because you're making the claim.
No, but I have a jurist who wrote a published book that's well kind of reviewed by publishing houses and has been in like republication for a long time, supporting what has just been said. So what is your reason reason for thinking that what he says is wrong.
Because
you haven't quoted any specific sources by Maliki, Hanafi, Shafi, and
you haven't quoted.
Ahmad.
You said on hearsay on someone in a paperback who says, "Oh, they believe that." Yes, but you see, in Islam we don't follow scholars. We follow the evidence.
So
we follow knowledge.
Ibn Taymiyyah says something, you don't think that gives you some reason to believe it?
Ibn Taymiyyah is not infallible.
True.
We always check what he says against the Quran and the Sunnah of the Prophet.
If you don't have any specific evidence that Ibn Taymiyyah or another scholar is wrong, don't you think it provides some evidence that stance is correct if they are stating that?
If they're saying something that's not backed up the Quran, then we're not obliged to believe it. We can believe it or not, depending on.
It depends on the interpretation.
We're only obliged to believe what is based on certain knowledge, which for a Muslim is always revelation.
Right, as I tried to say a bit earlier.
It's not just hearsay in a paperback. We need to say the original evidence. You see, that's not how Muslims do things.
Islam. Since you're not happy with my book of Islamic jurisprudence, no, we already know. But we'll come back and we'll look at.
I'm not happy with.
We really already know. But like,
I want to explain why I'm not happy with the way you're doing this, because I know, having read books. Hang on, you're interrupting. I'm trying to talk. You're interrupting. I just want to say finally that if you read on this, you read it. I'm aware of a great number of different jurist opinions, and even within one school, you can have a difference of opinion. To simply have one view of one jurist in 14th century Damascus, that doesn't mean it's Islam. It's actually laughable to think that somehow that's normative for Muslims today. That's not how it works.
Okay, but you haven't answered the question I asked you. What would it take to convince you? Would it take a jurist from every single school?
Convince what?
That what Jamie's saying is true. But what would you go? Okay,
I've never heard anyone scholar say this before. This is so weird.
Maybe because they're embarrassed about it.
No, that's you see, this is where your Western Islamophobia kicks in, and you've got this kind of the Muslims are covering over because of taqiyya.
Forgive me for
this is where you get it.
Forgive me for having
I heard you preaching. I heard you preaching.
Kind of an ideology that thinks you should make war against, non-Muslims on the frontier. Oh no, no. Okay, we'll look at the actual evidence, but we aren't going to do.
You haven't presented any words by Abu Hanifa or Shafi you haven't presented a single quote. But until you do, there's no debate to be had. Because we're not dealing with evidence, you're dealing with second-hand 14th century Damascene jurist opinion, which may or may not be accurate. And your trust in one dude is touching, but it's not Islamic. That's not how we do things.
The thing is, you've tried to put the onus on me to find higher evidence. I could equally put the onus on you to show that this scholar is incorrect. I'm not going to do that because I'm not going to be so lazy, and I'll relish looking at Malik's Muwatta and Abu Hanifa's original writings and showing that this jurist actually is correct. I've read books on this subject before,
and your view of quoting one scholar would be laughed at in a context of Islamic scholars. That's not how Muslim scholars do their fiqh when it comes to the rules of war. It's simply not how it's done.
No, the reason why I got this book is because it's quite helpful in that it's a comparative book of fiqh, and it gives the summary of what each of the four surviving schools thinks.
In the opinion of one man.
No, he's a qualified man. At the end, anyone is one man.
There are 1,000 qualified one men who one can refer to who necessarily agree with him. Is this naive trust in one guy you've come across who it seems to reinforce your preconceived ideas about Islam being a violent religion that must attack unbelievers?
Okay, but I've asked you for specific sources that disagree, and you haven't told me.
Okay, well, I'm about to tell you now.
That'd be great.
I'm about to tell you now. Now, there is a book, you can actually download it for free on the internet. It's called War and Peace in Islam. I can't remember the publisher is, but it's online now. It's written by a whole bunch of contemporary.
Is he one of the original scholars?
Original what scholars?
Is he one of the original imams? We're talking about what the original imams believed. Surely, I thought you were going to quote me one of their writings. Why should I believe this 20th century dude if you don't believe a 14th century jurist?
Right. Well, let me just finish. You interrupted me. So the book I'm referring to is a book by the leading scholars and academics of the Muslim world, including some Western scholars, and they discuss the original sources, including the four schools, and quote from them, and also from the Sahabah and the Quran. And I recommend that book. It's quite a thick volume, War and Peace in Islam, but it represents mainstream Sunni opinion. And I can tell you the views that you're reflecting now have absolutely nothing to do with mainstream Islamic opinion. You've got a view which you clutch to, and then you...
Isn't mainstream.
how you define Salafi is actually the view of the four madhabs, that we always go back to the earliest sources. We don't just make up things as we go along. There's a normative tradition that goes back to the Sahabah and to the Prophet and to the Quran. That is you won't find any mainstream Muslim disagreeing with that. The Sahabah put a special emphasis on that, and over against any later traditions. This is true, but in terms of a creedal thing, all Muslim scholars who are Sunni agree you go back to the Quran, the Sahabah, and the four schools. That's just normative Sunni Islam, unless you're a Shia. But this is mainstream Shia. So the book I'm referring you to, by the top scholars who are expert in this, who do quote the sources, they reach very different conclusions than you do. And these are experts who know the Arabic. And these are people I look to, not some guy with a paperback who's from the 14th century one scholar. That's not Islam. I keep on saying this, but one day you'll discover this.
Well, you don't actually have your book, which you claim says that thing here. I actually have my evidence here. Maybe we should come back next week.
You have not quoted a single quote
when we both have our
Sahaba.
evidence, like from the four Imams, we'll see what the four Imams believe, and we'll do that next week.
Okay, fine.
Okay.
Can you speak about the other claims?
Oh, about the error in the Quran. I mean, do you have what's the word?
Not really.
No. I was going to ask, do you have stamina for that? Is that something you'd enjoy doing? I don't want to
What's the error in the Quran?
Okay.
Give me the quote.
So
We're going to quote from the Arabic, of course.
Surah 4.
You're going to quote from the Arabic, of course.
I'm not going to quote from the Arabic.
Okay.
I've
Already
read...
one problem. We're not quoting from the Quran. We're
read...
quoting from an English translation.
Okay, but I've read...
It's a mathematical thing.
I've read English tafsirs.
This is an important methodological point. People think it says the Noble Quran. It actually says interpretation of the meanings. There's no Arabic. I could throw this on the floor and walk away, and no Muslim could say I was doing anything terribly wrong. Because this is not the actual Quran. It really matters that you understand the original language.
You aren't that timid. You don't
This is the view of Muslims. The Quran is in Arabic. It's not any translation. So no, we're not looking at what it actually says. If we're not quoting from the Arabic.
Are you that scared to look at the meaning of the Quran?
I'm trying to train you in how to think Islamically about how we deal with
it sounds like you're already creating excuses.
I'm trying to introduce you to how we see this book. We don't just open up any old English translation and say, the Quran says.
No, I've read tafsirs on this as well, and it says the exact same thing. They just paraphrase it. It's not like it's not a figurative text. It's a very straightforward, meat and potatoes piece of text.
What, the Quran?
No, this verse I'm about to quote.
Okay. But the point I'm making is an important point about before we jump to English translation. No, you see, you've got no patience to learn about Islam. You just want to prove your point. You don't want to learn. Yeah,
well, I think I'm right about this.
Hey, what's your verse?
Okay, so it's in Surah 4, verse 11, ayah 11 and 12. And I guess you're about to read it yourself now.